We think you should know that Imperfect Heroes podcast is a production of Little Hearts Academy USA.
You're listening to episode 134 of Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting, the perfect podcast for imperfect parents looking to find joy in their experience of raising children in an imperfect world. And I'm your host, DJ Stutz. Welcome, heroes and heroines, and thank you for choosing to spend the next few minutes with Imperfect Heroes. We have a crazy, amazing topic and guest today. But before we get started, I'm wondering, have you found yourself just yearning for 15 minutes of uninterrupted peace in the past month, just so you could take a shower? Have you ever dreamt of leaving the house without a single yell? And have you ever watched a news story and thought, that could be my child in the future? Well, I've got your back. Sign up for a no-cost 50-minute conversation with me and let's chat about those parenting moments and find some solutions together. The link to my calendar is right down there in the show notes, and I can't wait to connect with you. Well, today we have, like I said, a crazy awesome topic and an equally crazy awesome guest. Autism can be a pretty scary word, and it seems like we are hearing it more and more. And the spectrum is just so broad. Have you ever heard of the term educational autism? This is when the doctors say the child doesn't have autism, but the educators feel their behaviors in class and their difficulty in social skills and learning capacity are autistic in nature. And so they're going to label your child with educational autism anyway. Don't even get me started. Well, my guest, Marci Melzer, has some answers to this. So let's talk about virtual autism. Get ready to be amazed. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at Imperfect Heroes Podcast. And today we are talking about an amazing concept that's kind of new. I've got my friend here, Marci Melzer. Marci, why don't you tell us, you're with Waves of Communication, what's going on?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Your audience is my audience. So I'm super happy to talk to all of you moms and dads out there. My name's Marci, and my platform is called Waves of Communication because my background is a speech pathology. So I was a speech therapist for 30 years, and about 6 years ago, I shifted my platform from working with children directly to working with parents and caregivers who have children from birth through way more than 8, but those are certainly the key years for communication development. And my platform is all about equipping and empowering parents and caregivers. So if you're the mom or the dad or the grandma or the nanny or whoever it is that spends the chunk of the day with this child, you can be their primary language facilitator. And we know, DJ, that there's so many kids now that are late to develop speech, more than ever used to be since before the pandemic, for sure. Now, there's a lot of reasons, many reasons, as unique to each individual child. But there are categories of kids that I see who are showing up more now these days. And those kids I categorize in this area called virtual autism. So the trend is that every child who's not talking by 2 years old is automatically shoved into that autism label because they can get therapies and all of that stuff. And that's been going on for a really long time. So with all of these kids so late talking, and there being more and more of them, the problem is they're all being stuck into the same bucket, and that's that autism bucket, right? And it's because the kids are not talking yet. They're late to develop speech, but there's nothing wrong with their intelligence, their curiosity, their interest, even their motivation. But the issue is, like the old days, kids learned about life and the world from being out in life in the world, from playing with mom and going to the grocery store and going to the park and going to preschool and all of those other things. And yes, before the pandemic, we had those things, but when it shut down, there is a whole new crop of kids that are coming out whose parents, it never was normalized, this going out. In fact, they were stopped from doing it, right?
Exactly.
So they had to find some solutions. We all had to find solutions during the pandemic. And unfortunately for the kids, most of those solutions were rooted in technology. Right? Because all the classes were on the computer and the parents were giving the kids the computer or the TV to babysit so they could work from home.
Exactly.
And there were no choices because remember, they didn't give us a choice about going out at all. No. They told us we had to stay home with our kids. And they didn't even give parents much training or support in what to do with their kids. They just had the Zoom appointments or this thing or whatever. And with so many different financial and health issues, people were losing family members or afraid to lose family members and all these emotional and financial stretches and all that other stuff that moms and dads and grandmas and parenting kids and the focus on the child, you know, like all of that stuff, that kind of couldn't happen for a lot of people. And it's not just a small percentage, it's a real lot of people. So I know that there are moms and dads and caregivers and grandmas listening to this thing because this idea of virtual autism is becoming very well known because what's happening is parents are freaking out. Their kids are not developing. Maybe they have older siblings who did it differently, like they were pre-pandemic, you know, talkers. And these little ones aren't doing it the same. They're not socialized on the same, or they're resistant, right? Now that things are opening up, because the inside was so normalized and everybody had to stay in and like it, pretty much is what we were told. Now that's what parents told kids, stay in and like it. Sure. And so now that we can get out and they say, let's go to the park, let's go out, let's go do these things, the kids don't want to. And this isn't just till 8. The teenagers got it, the 20-year-olds got it, even the parents got it, you see, because you and I are in a generation where our parents had us on our hip while we were everywhere. They were cooking. There were no devices. There was no even places to stick us in front of because the TV kids shows only ran on Saturday mornings. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like there was available stuff to teach us. So guess who had to do the job? Moms and dads. That's right. And so I think it just happened that culturally, parents sort of felt like it was okay to give this up. And then what happened in the field? So like I'm in the field, right? So here we are as therapists and parents keep bringing these kids who are not talking and they're showing these red flag, I'm doing my air quotes, red flag behaviors. And the parents are freaking out and they take them to the professionals, right? And the professionals say, oh, tisk, that's autism. You need all the things. Just give that child to me because they're impaired. And again, my air quotes. Because remember, that's all they have in the healthcare system or the special education system is some kind of diagnosis or something. And that happens in the healthcare system with the autism, but it also happens in the education system, doesn't it?
Yeah, in fact, I've had cases with kids who did not qualify for being autistic medically. The medical doctors weren't saying, oh, he's autistic, but the educators and the specialists. And so they developed the term educationally autistic, which was like, what are we talking about?
Right. And remember, you and I know, as the professionals who've been in schools that these labels are there for criteria of kids for financial reasons.
Right.
Because if the school labels a child with something, then they can submit those labeled kids, those numbers of labeled kids in their school to get more funding for the school. And the same thing happens in the healthcare system. A child who shows up again. So basically, a child who shows up at the doctor's office, the parents are taking them all over there. And if a child shows up with the symptoms to the doctor, they're going to get the diagnosis. And then what do they have except for therapy? And same in school. If they show up with issues, then all they have is these labels that they can put on them so that they can give them special education services. Right. So whatever else, because they can't get any of those things, either insurance payment for therapy or special education services, without some kind of label. And even though these kids are really late to develop, they really are late, I promise. They really are needing help. They really, really do. It's not because they're impaired. And the problem is, it works in the education system like it does in the medical system. If you get diagnosed with something, you get the therapy that goes with that diagnosis. So if you get a diabetes diagnosis, you're going to get the medicine that goes with it. Now, in the old days, some of your audience might be old enough to remember that about 15 years ago, everybody wanted to get their kids diagnosed with ADHD because they wouldn't sit in the class and they couldn't sit and learn and that kind of stuff. And it was about the time when TV started to get very kid-friendly and cable was friendly and all of that stuff. And people were having kids in front of the television a lot because both parents started working and all of that was happening. So now there was less parenting time because both parents are out of the house working. More kids are watching cable TV, getting ideas from cable TV and not from their moms and dads and whatever, right? And so now we've got this new generation of kids that are parented by tech. And because tech can't teach a child language. This is the problem. It can teach them words to say. It can give them ideas. It can even teach concepts like gravity, because you watch the thing fall on somebody's head and ouch, he goes ouch. And you see when images of what's going on. But usually, in fact, almost always, whatever's coming off the video is far too fast and complex for a new language learner, right? They need moms and dads to say, come on, Joey, let's go play outside. Come with mama. Let's go with mama. And because they start with basic kind of talking as they evolve, right? The kid each evolves. They start with baby toddler talk and then they evolve it up through. And actually it starts with crying out of the womb and evolves into the baby talk. Like that's how it works, this whole evolution. And that's what I teach, you see, because we don't need therapists to diagnose kids with something wrong. We just need moms and dads and grandmas and caregivers and whoever spends time with the child to take up that job, not give it away to the technology who's talking too fast and too far above the child. And it's not giving it away to therapists who are below the child, thinking they're stupid and impaired and autistic and talking to them like, because they could be 4 or 5 years old. And if they don't move past certain levels in the therapy, they're still having to match pictures because they're not talking, right?
Well, and another piece, too, is the technology is not teaching them taking turns in talking.
No,
I say something, you say something.
Right? It's teaching that hyper independence. I did it. I can do it. I did this myself. I don't need you. I don't want you. I don't want your way. I want my way. My way is better than your way. This is what kids learn from these videos because look at the influencers. They all want to be the best. Good enough, or try your hardest, or let's work together. All these concepts that, they do. You got to give the kids shows credit, because at least they do that. Like the Daniel Tiger and the Power Pets and all those guys, they tend to bring up these themes, right, about how to be kind to other people and whatever. But that's not what a lot of these kids are watching. They're watching kids opening their backpacks and pulling out their stuff, or their surprise boxes that they're opening, or silent videos of them playing with their toys or shopping or things like that. They're not learning about how these toys work and where did the money come from, and we're driving to the store and we can only buy one thing. This is our budget, all that stuff, because parents can teach all these same concepts with the grocery store every week. Do we buy the cookies or not the cookies? Do we buy the milk or not the milk? Which one is more important in our life? Like, this is how we teach kids. And this is what I feel like is missing nowadays. Like, it started to get replaced back when both parents had to work and kids were in daycares. And then they fixed the daycares so it wasn't like 20 kids with a dark room. Now they have regulations in these daycares and they're better and theirs are cleaner since COVID, right? And all of those beautiful curriculums that are set up for kids to go and have circle time and groups and centers and all day on the playground and playing with kids. But again, we've got a whole population of kids that is either not ready to go there because they don't know how to talk and socialize. They're going to steal all the toys. They're going to take their stuff. They're not going to want to sit and listen to the school and the teacher, or they don't have any rule following because there's been no boundaries at home, because there's been no early preschool and things like that. There's all these things. But remember, DJ, these are not things that therapy teaches kids.
Right.
They're not.
And in fact,
these are things that parents teach kids. And you need everyday exposure, right? So, like, that's how some kids, their first exposure to rules may be at early preschool at 2 years old, right? But again, if your child missed it, if they didn't get to go to early preschool, and then 3 years old, they got to that early intervention, right? That's that screener saying, oh no, your kid's not ready for kindergarten. They're going to have to go to special ed. So they're segregating all these nonverbal kids together, whether they're impaired or not, because they're not using real standard. They're literally judging kids by the money they can get. And so what happens to these kids is they just get left behind and called autistic, and then they just get piled into that special ed thing where there is no expectation of meeting those goals. So the other kids in class, we've got targets, right? You got to memorize all your ABCs, or you've got to know all your letter sounds, or you got to do all this stuff, and the teacher's got all this criteria that they're trying to get through. But see, they're not giving these kids a chance even to catch up with that curriculum, because that teacher can't possibly help those kids.
Well, it depends on where you live too, because I know when I was doing kindergarten, all of my kids who were on IEPs, special needs, right? They still had to meet that criteria.
Oh, they did.
And so then you have teachers who are freaking out and like, he won't learn, he's autistic. How am I supposed to? And yet, with the right approach, you can do it. And for most of these kids, the right approach is being with their peers and working with their peers and having that exposure and that practice every day and understanding how to get the toy if I want the toy and someone else has it, and making those negotiations. I always felt bad when I would see teachers who were like, oh, this kid. And so the teacher gets more frustrated with that child because that child is keeping them from getting their whatever percentage and keeping them from being like a highly effective teacher in their evaluations.
Right. Yeah, because then, you don't get your bonus, or you don't get your whatever in your pay if you don't keep all your kids up. So that's what's happening. And so some places teachers are complaining about that. And so they're not accepting any more special needs kids in their classroom. So some teachers are just not teaching them at all. I've been traveling around the world. It's been interesting because I've been able to see school situations in Australia, and India and Dubai. And what they're doing in those places is just segregating the kids. Like the old days, they're not even letting them into the class because the teacher says, I have no structure, I have no way to train these kids. And a lot of them are private pay schools. So if you're paying for a private school, you may not have any therapy or whatever of that going on too. And those teachers don't have the support to teach your child that's not talking well yet and doesn't have social skills and no pre-academics because they've been on their phone 4 or 5 hours a day watching their same favorite music videos in 5 languages because they figured out how to work that algorithm. Because they're learning. You see, these kids are learning every day. It's just their environment that is causing them to show up not able to work in the environment, to go in the environment. So, so that's what my platform is all about, really giving this responsibility back to parents, just like you. What is it that parents can do with children to help them catch up? Now, it seems like a no-brainer, but getting that tech time reduced is obviously the number one thing that needs to be considered, but it can't just happen willy-nilly. You can't just take that phone away cold turkey. It's up to you, the one who realizes, number one, that there's too much tech time going, that it's up to you to fill that time. So you're the one that gave the child the phone instead of you. Sorry. I mean, it happened.
It's true.
Whether you could help it or not, it was the only solution available. It was the easy solution available. It doesn't matter why it happened. But the really good news that we know about is that brains, especially young brains, especially those under 8, have a ton of neuroplasticity. And yes, it is easy for them to fall into habits and learn rules or learn unhealthy habits, but it's also easy for them to follow rules too. It only takes about 2 weeks of a new classroom, kids that never met you at all. And in your case, you had kids that didn't go to school very much. There were a lot of issues even at their home and stuff. And you were a strange white lady with who knows what kind of ideas, right? And it was up to you to earn those kids' trust and respect, right?
Absolutely.
That's what it takes. And it starts even now with these little kids. So you're not going to earn their trust and respect if you swipe away their tablets and then make them sit and cry. You've got to figure out what to do instead. And so it's all about habit change, and then not just to replace one entertainment with another entertainment, but really try to get in, think about in your own child's history, where have they missed exposure to peers? Like you said, they need to be around their friends. Where have they been around teachers who will let them come, that won't try to strap them into something, but will be so attractive in their learning that the child will come to them? Your soccer coach, your swim coach, your nanny, the kid up the street, you know what I mean? That one that's got the good ideas, right? The one that's got the good ideas. This is all you need, moms and dads, is this kind of community around your child to rebuild this connected community with peers and aunties, even if they're not real aunties, you know what I mean? Familiar adults, those friends. When you go to the store, you can facilitate these things. Again, yes, your child isn't, but you're going to have to take the phone away before you go to the store, and you have to plan ahead, teach ahead. You and I were talking about this before.
We were.
You can't just spring this on a child. Okay, tablet time's over. Now we're getting out in the world. Because remember, we talked earlier, they don't like it. They don't know it. It's unfamiliar. They're afraid of it. And they're not so sure it's going to be fun. But you and I, when we were kids, you didn't come in the house unless you were all dirty. And your mom knew you had fun because you were all dirty.
Because
your clothes were all dirty.
Yes. In
right?
fact, I'll tell you, I even had a little kid the last year that I taught. So I've only had 1 year without kids, but he wouldn't speak above a whisper in class. And everybody's worried about him. He was fine at home, but with COVID, he had such limited exposure to, and no fault to the parents, but such limited, exactly. I don't want anybody feeling bad about this. It's just something that was thrown on us.
Yeah, no, this is an information alert for you. It's just sort of like one of those Amber Alerts, only it's like
Right.
what's missing now is your connection with your child. The only thing that's missing. And that's what you have to look for, right? And that's what you have to look for. And that's what my platform is all about. Because I know if your child is 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 even, and still not using speech functionally, right? I mean, outside of the house with everybody else. And even if they are talking, but in the house, but not out of the house.
Kids are doing what works for them well.
Right.
And so if I'm a nervous kid, I don't want to talk to the other kids. I'm a little shy because I spent all this time, for whatever reason, away from other kids. Or there's a lot of other reasons that kids will be shy and not do that. But I have found that, oh, wait, if I don't talk, if I keep it quiet, I get pulled aside. I'm not by all these other kids and all the noise. And so then there's an encouragement for them. For me, I wish that I could just, for kindergarten, spend, instead of 20 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon outside, let's do all of morning outside while it's, or after, depending on the weather.
Right.
But I wish that they were like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just go and argue about things and work it out and learn how to manage. Yes, how to negotiate, how to speak my piece and stand up for myself. And then we as teachers are watching and supporting. I would take my class outside every chance I got so that we're looking for, even if we're counting, how many pine cones can you pick up?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an amazing strategy for parents too. Again, it might feel too hot. So this is your excuse to get the hose and have a water fight outside.
The sprinklers. Did you run in the sprinklers when you were a kid?
Exactly, of course. Yes. Because we didn't have all kinds of air conditioning and all that stuff. I lived in Chicago and it got hot. So we sprinkled. We ran in the sprinkler. Yeah. This is your time, because what it takes, here's the thing. There's a lot of shock and awe in the technology, right? Surprises, new things. I want this thing. This is the key. If you want to attract your child away from technology and into the world where you can teach them how to swim, or how to not touch poison ivy if you're in the woods, or how to stay away from jellyfish at the beach. Or it doesn't matter where you are outdoors, how to avoid dogs. Somebody's walking their dog, how to not run up to that dog, right? All these things that you realize in life. See, that when I talk about parents taking this job back, it is exactly those kinds of activities, DJ, that I give them to do. Cooking is another one. Following a recipe, step by steps, measurements. If you screw it up and you burn it, dealing with the loss of that. And on the other hand, you make a beautiful cake and you get to give it to grandma for a birthday, the positive end of that. There is so much more than just the labels of what things are.
Yes. Well, and two, another thing that you can do with your kids with recipes is you're teaching them following instructions. You're teaching them math. You're teaching them all of these other things that are academic. And yet at the same time, you're building relationships. You're building confidence. You're building their ability to understand the world around them. You're teaching them science. All of these things.
It's not even just about being kind and letting them learn on their level. It's about teaching excellence, right? Because if you're going to make a recipe or build a dog house or whatever, you fix the car, whatever you're doing with your child, clean the toilet even, you want to show them how to do it the best, right from the get-go, right from the very beginning. So you're demonstrating what it looks like. Because remember, they haven't been watching you, moms and dads. They've been in their phone. They're not watching peers. They're not watching you. They're not watching anybody. If you reflect to them what it looks like to be a successful, social, academically, I did my stuff. You share your life with them, because I think this is what a lot of parents forget to do too. And when life is not so fun, we're worried about health losses and money and job and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's not so appropriate to share that stuff with kids. But the positive stuff, when something new is coming, I can't wait for my birthday next week, or daddy and my anniversary is next month, or grandma and grandpa are coming to visit from across the country. These upcoming cool events that are connected to people we love. Not everybody celebrates these things, but our family does, right? Our family has barbecues. We go fishing. Whatever your family does as a culture and values and that kind of stuff, that's where you start. You don't have to Google anything. Which toy should I buy on Amazon?
Well, and two, I mean, we've got a culture right now where kids are so used to getting the toy that they want, bam, right away. They don't have to plan and wait. A 5-year-old is completely capable of saying, my toy costs $40 and I need to, or you can even say, if you earn $10, I'll pick up the rest. There are different ways that you can do it so that our kids aren't getting everything at the snap of a finger. And then they come into adulthood and they have these adult relationships and they're like, what do you mean you're not letting me have my way? Like, how awful are you? This is all your fault.
When they were 2 or 3, it worked. All they did was squeak one way sideways. They didn't even have to talk. And this is what's happening where all you moms and dads out there that are in virtual autism. You see, your children are smart and they know how to get you to understand exactly what they want from you or for you to do. They want you to give them not the pink one, but the blue one, not the little one, but the big one, not the hot one, but the cold one. They will find the way to tell you exactly what they want. And so most parents right now today with kids that are doing that non-verbally, they're using their behaviors, they're using their gestures, they're using their whatevers, they're singing songs, they're using echolalia, they're using all kinds of stuff that's not functional speech. And parents are responding to it without teaching the proper spoken language to replace it. So that's what is the big responsibility. It's not about taking away tech. It's about what are you teaching your child? And if you teach them because your family loves fishing, you're going to be talking about fishing. If you're cooking, you're going to talk about cooking, and your child will learn. You don't have to be a teacher. You are a teacher.
Oh, yeah. The minute that, when I became a big sister, I became a teacher, right?
That's right.
I don't even have to have a kid to become a teacher.
That's right.
But another thing, too, is that it's funny that kids, even very young, so I'm the oldest of 7, and I have 5 brothers, and the youngest was born 2 weeks before I turned 17. And
wow.
Yeah, I know. So he was like mine, actually. He slept in my room. I got up with him at night. So anyway, but he was 18 months old. And he would sit on a Wednesday morning at 6:30 a.m. while the rest of us are up and getting ready to go to school. And he knew how to turn the TV on. And he knew how to turn the knob for channels. And he would be screaming at the TV because he couldn't find a football game at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning. And isn't it interesting, though, at 18 months, what kind of language does he have? And yet, he was very clear. We knew exactly what that kid was looking for.
Exactly. Even though you knew it was football. Even though you knew it was football.
Guess what he does for a living now?
It has to be something football related.
He's a high school football coach. And he runs the weight room. Yep. And he got his master's in, I forget it, it's like athletic training.
Yeah.
Making sure, taking care of injuries. And so even when they're really young, he had to learn. There was nothing we could do to get a football game for him. He could scream all he wanted.
Right, that's right.
He could turn the channels. He could turn the TV off and on again. All of that.
So interesting.
He wasn't going to get football at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning. There was nothing we could do. He had to learn to manage it.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. And that delayed gratification that he had to develop in himself at starting at 18 months old was, I gotta wait till Saturday or Sunday to see a football game. It only happens on the weekends. This is Monday. And we gotta wait a whole, because the day before Sunday, we had football all day, right? And so he was in football heaven. And on Monday, depression, football's gone. And you think about now, a kid could find and watch that game over and over and over again, any game they want, with any sport they want, with any team they want, anytime. This idea of delayed gratification is what keeps us our drive, right? Because if he had got to watch that football, he wouldn't have had a chance to even think in his mind about his previous experience. He'd just be watching more of it, more of it. And now he's thinking about the plays and he's thinking whatever interests him about that football. When he's not got it, he had, like you said, he had to figure it out somehow because nobody wants to be upset all day. And your family was like, dude, we can take you out. We can play football with you. We can.
Which is what we wound up doing.
Right, of course.
Right.
Because the kid is focused on football. And so that's no different than every child watching this. They just find it themselves, you see, on the phone more quickly.
Yeah, they find it more quickly than anything that we've ever had. And so we're feeding into that instant gratification that the kids are used to getting. And all they have to do is start yelling. Ooh, give him that. Shut him up. And instead of like, oh yeah, you're upset. Well, we can go outside. We're at a restaurant. We don't want to bother anybody, but we can go outside. Yeah. I've done that with grandkids, and it's funny because my youngest daughter, her son was having a fit. He wanted something. He couldn't find it, or I can't remember. We were in a restaurant. And I'm like, hey, buddy, come on, we'll go outside and you can yell. And my daughter's like, And I said, he'll be fine. And he calmed down and we came back in. And I did it twice. I had to do it twice with him. He's very used to getting his way. And when he came back in, he was like, oh, if I cry, Nina's going to take me out again. I better not cry.
And so there's another lesson for everybody. I mean, I know that this is not, I'm sure I'm singing to the choir here, but you talk about consistency. You must be talking about consistency. Absolutely. And how when you see this problem, it's going to keep coming up if you don't just stop and address it. And okay, maybe you didn't get to eat your food on time or, whatever, like you didn't get to sit and have conversation with the adults at the table, but you guys chose to take a kid with you to the restaurant. So you can't just leave the kids. I mean, you chose to take a child. If you want to have adult conversation, you hire a babysitter, right?
Oh, I love you. It's so true.
I mean, now you feel bad that you can't have adult conversation because I can't afford to eat and have a babysitter, so you're going to suffer through your meal, you see. Just wait. Do your own delayed gratification, right, Mama?
Exactly.
Maybe we can't go this week, but we can go have dinner every other Saturday, and it's just grown-up time, and in the middle, we'll spend time with our kids. Or you swap babysitting with someone else, or you figure out, because just like your brother, I know you want it what you want it right now. We all do. It's human nature. It's human nature. But again, what are you reflecting to your child when you make them suffer for your benefit?
Right.
What are you showing them? Showing them how to turn it around and do it straight back to ya.
Well, and here's another thing you can do if you're going out or whatever, is you let them see, oh, we're going into church. Oh, we're going into a movie or to dinner or whatever. We're leaving our phone in the car. It's not even available to you. And it's not available to me.
Right.
And you've told them ahead of time, when we go to X, whatever it is, that's not a phone place. That is
it's a no phone zone.
No phone zone. We're going to use our manners. We're going to have a conversation.
Because ahead of the time, you're all going there together. And see, this is also a problem that parents fall into, a habit that parents fall into. You're in your own head, making your itinerary.
Yeah. And you know what? And I love the idea of having an itinerary. And so that you're telling the kids what you've got to do. When I would go out and do my errands, and blessed me, I only had 2 preschoolers at home at a time. And so they it wasn't on purpose, but that's how they were
Right.
spaced. And so I
Yeah.
would have two kids usually in the car with me, and we could have a list. And first we're going to do this. And then they could cross it off when it was done.
Right.
Okay,
And
Rocky,
each
what's
one of
next?
those things they're part of, right? You give them jobs. So if we're going to the cleaner, you're going to hand them the stuff, and you give them the credit card. And now we're going to the groceries. Everybody's got to help carry. Or you go and find the milk, and you go and find the cereal, that kind of stuff.
And another thing I did too with that list is I put in, after this, then 20 minutes at the park.
Right. Yeah,
or
you
at the
always
splash pad.
Schedule in super cool things. So it's super hot out. We have no milk or ice cream. Let's go to the store, and we're definitely going to buy ice cream at the store. And then when we come home, we'll have splash pad time and then ice cream. But we can't have any of that until we go to the store.
Exactly.
So come on, let's go to the store, and I'm going to help you make it easy, fun. And that's the thing. You as the grown-up know how to make everything easy and fun.
You do.
It's when you're stuck into, I got to do this and do this faster, do it, blah, 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 you know, when you're not having fun and they're not having fun because you're too big of a hurry because you haven't planned ahead and you haven't got your itinerary.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. It just parenting catches up with you and you turn into a firefighter, solving problems, putting out fires instead of the prevention and the head at teaching. So those are the biggest, I would say, takeaways from this podcast. If I could help you summarize, because that's what I do on my podcast too, is obviously we're talking about virtual autism. Kids are being diagnosed with autism, getting that stamp, either at school or at the whatevers, and a big majority of them do not have the disorder. They're just getting it because of the systems. And so what that means is, that means it comes down to you as the mom and dad to realize what you're being offered.
Absolutely.
You know, because you're getting something for free with your services or whatever you're getting offered. You know what I mean? Pay attention to what that is, see what it is and all of that. And if it doesn't sound like time on the playground where kids get to be with kids and learn and practice things and like that, if that's not what that education environment sounds like to you, then you really need to second guess it, right? Or as DJ says, find another one. And the best thing is, if you can't find one, take a break. Your child's already late. Take 6 months and dig in, or 1 year and dig into a homeschool situation where maybe they'll be behind academically. They can always catch up on algebra, moms and dads, but they will never catch up with speaking and social skills and those pre-academics, like sharing and listening in a group and all those things that DJ is talking about, because you want your child to be able to go and learn from the teacher. And you want the teacher to be able to see your child as one of those kids ready to show up to learn. Now, they don't come out automatically like that. That comes from moms and dads and caregivers doing it. So even if your child is now in special ed or they're in other things, you've got weeks left of this summer to be able to help yourself. Or if you're watching this in the fall, you've got your child's whole life to turn this around, and you've got all the time you have with them. Even if you're working full time and it's before and after school or the weekends, you have that time. Don't give it away to professionals. Don't give it away to devices.
You are, love it. I love it. Let's talk for a minute, Marci, about your podcast, because I want parents to know where to find you, because you have so much great information. They can listen after they listen to mine.
We're recording this in July, and I just hit 6,000 subscribers yesterday, so I'm pretty proud of that. I've been at it for about 6 years. There's 800 videos on my YouTube channel, and that's where it starts. But I also have a podcast called the Language Facilitation Helpline Podcast. So if you like to listen, you go there. If you like to watch, you go to YouTube. You might really like those YouTube videos because everyone is like a lesson. There are slides and videos, and I recommend other videos from the channel. So if you are really in the mindset of, I'm motivated to help my child get caught up so that I can send him to school ready to speak and be social and all of that stuff, Waves of Communication on YouTube is the best place to find all of that. And then I have a website where I offer coaching. I've written some books. I've got all kinds of other stuff too. So if the YouTube videos aren't enough, I know a lot of people are going to the YouTube University, and that's why I created my own coursework there. But on my website, I have workshops and trainings and coaching offerings, and you can buy my books and all of that stuff at wavesofcommunication.com. So thanks.
Marci, you're wonderful. You make me tired just thinking of all the things that you have going on. You're doing so great. So, Marci, before we go, because I always ask my guests the exact same question at the end of the podcast, but how would you describe a successful parent, since we know there are no perfect ones?
If I had to go with an analogy word, it would be old school. Old school parenting. Like your grandmas did. They taught you the stuff that you needed for life, how to cook for yourself, how to clean up after yourself, how to do all that stuff for yourself, how to take care of yourself so that you don't have to depend on other people and you can communicate all your wisdom with the world. So old school parenting where you share the experiences of your life and teach your child through those things. That's my favorite parenting model.
I love you. That's so good. Yes. So everybody, if you are listening on the podcast, please leave us a rating and a review. And if you go down on whatever format, even Rumble and YouTube, if you go down into the show notes, we're going to have all of Marci's information and how to connect. If you're on Rumble or YouTube, be sure to follow, hit that follow button, and then leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about what we're putting out there. We love that. And so, Marci, thank you for joining us and being part of things. And to everybody else, let's find joy in parenting. Bye, everyone.